Hello, everybody. Simon Rosenberg from Hopium Chronicles. This is really a remarkable. It's been a remarkable week in our politics. I mean, it's hard to even believe that the transition from Joe Biden to the vice president happened just 8 days ago. The election has utterly transformed, and we should be very optimistic about what's going to happen this November if we continue to do the work that we all need to do to help win. We have today Leader Hakeem Jeffries is going to be joining us in just a few minutes to give us an update on the House races. He's coming here today because our community has really rallied for the House races that we endorse. We have 12 House districts that we've endorsed in, all open seat and challenger races. If we win those 12 seats, simply we will flip the House, and that's why we've stayed so focused. We've raised almost $700,000 for these 12 races in just 8 weeks. Many of you are volunteering aggressively in these races. It's very exciting. And, it just speaks to this moment that this is a moment of such promise and optimism and hope in our family and our country. The election is utterly transformed. The vice president, I think three things really drove this moment. One was the Republican convention, by picking Vance, and Trump's terrible speech sort of was a very, very loud reminder of the extremism of their party. I think for all the attempts that Trump had to kind of paper over and shave the edges of MAGA extremism, the Vance pick sort of threw it in all of our faces in a very aggressive way. It was probably impossible for him to have picked a more extreme and dangerous partner in his race. And I think that was the first thing that kind of lit this fire that's burning in our country right now in our politics. Number two was Joe Biden's elegant and graceful and patriotic and selfless decision to step out of the race and to endorse Kamala Harris. And I think that moment, that kind of shocking moment, that remarkable moment, that historic moment, that reminder of the power of our democracy and how here in democracies there is no indispensable man or woman, unlike autocracies. Joe Biden gave us all a powerful reminder of the nature of our political system, our democracy, the American way, by stepping down. And it was this incredibly inspiring moment. And then the third piece was the vice president's just commanding first week. She was ready. It was clear she was ready. Her narrative and her message and her story is powerful. It's her own. It's freedom. It's forward, backward. It's all the things that she's been saying. And I've known the vice president for over 20 years, and I've been just amazed with just how powerful she's been in this first week. And these three things together, I think, has lit this incredible fire in our politics. And today we're on the front foot. We're on offense. We're winning this election. The polls are moving in our favor, in our direction, I should say, to be very precise. We'll see what happens this week. But the vice president gained 2, 3, 4 points. We're now even in the battleground states. Trump lost his lead. It's a very competitive election. The Senate polling continues to be very encouraging and strong. We're going to hear about the House races, but what we know in terms of our fundraising in the second quarter, the fundraising in the last week, we've set records. Everybody has set records, right? The Kamala Harris campaign has set records, the DSCC and the DCCC. I've talked to candidates around the country. They say that they're also experiencing a huge increase in fundraising and volunteers into their races too, not just at the presidential level. The entire Democratic pro-democracy family has been supercharged in the last week. The Harris campaign has raised over $200 million. They've had, as of this morning, 170,000 new volunteers, which is just an unbelievable number. And what it means is that our party, our candidates, our offering have gotten much stronger and more muscular. This isn't, as the Politico called it today, or one of the newspapers called it, a sugar high. It's not a sugar high. The election has been transformed. Our party has much more money and many more volunteers. We're much more powerful than we were a week ago, 10 days ago. We're stronger. And, this grassroots strength that's been fueling our victories all across the country since Dobbs is now been supercharged. And all of you who are here, or any of you do grassroots work of some kind or another, that in your own communities, how fired up everybody is. And this kind of infectious energy and, what I call the virtuous cycle of participation that kicks in elections like this, right? Where all of a sudden people see other people working, so they work. And you go and you're going to make phone calls for somebody, and you call your friend and say, hey, can you join me? And they're like, wow, that was really fun. People are fired up. It creates this virtuous cycle of participation where people are engaging. It creates this virtuous cycle where that engagement, more money. The campaigns get bigger and stronger, allowing them to reach more people. And what's happened in the last 10 days is that this virtuous cycle of participation has kicked in really hard. Campaigns that win kick in this virtuous cycle of participation, right? Where they grow, they reach more voters. That reaching more voters produces more volunteers, makes them stronger. We're all in that process now. Every Democratic campaign is a remarkable thing. And we are doing all of this without even having, I think, gotten the full effect of the rallying behind the vice president. We haven't picked a VP. We haven't had our convention. And so to me, the likely scenario here is that if it's even today, that we're likely to be ahead by 2 to 3 points by the end of our convention. That's a reasonable expectation about what's going to happen here. And that will put the vice president in the driver's seat in this election. Certainly, we're going to have a much more powerful grassroots army. And what's happening now is that we're building the most powerful democratic political machine that any of us have ever seen. And that's going to matter, in once the early vote begins in September 20th. We're strong, right? Our leader is strong. She's in command of the moment. Our party is unified and powerful and ready to go. And they continue to be the ugliest political thing that any of us have ever seen. JD Vance, I think, has created, he's the most unpopular vice presidential pick in modern polling history. He is an unbelievable extremist. I'm not going to go through all this today because this is stuff we talk about all the time. But it is the contrast between our modern, forward-looking leader, Kamala Harris, and the backward-looking, extreme, ugly offering of Trump and Vance. That contrast is brighter today than it's been ever before. And voters are responding to it. I mean, I tweeted last night that, it is remarkable how quickly this election has become about the opportunities of a wonderful future versus the dangers of a dark past. And this forward and backward or modern and reactionary kind of frame that the vice president is trying to put on the race, I think is very powerful because it gets us out of the left-right debate. It's much more inclusive. It allows people to come along with her who may not even agree with her ideologically, because it is about the future. I mean, as we say here, this election really is about our democracy, our freedoms, and our future. And I think the vice president has so ably and she dove into this moment in a very intuitive way. I mean, I expected that it was going to take her a few weeks to kind of get herself grounded and get sure-footed about where she was, and it happened right away. I mean, that very first set of remarks she gave last Monday at the campaign headquarters was so powerful and so strong and so muscular. And I'm so proud of her. I'm so impressed. I'm motivated and inspired by this election, as I think all of us are. And so we should feel really good about everything, everybody. And we've got a lot of work to do, but it's going to be joyful work now, right? And I think some of the, as I said, I was on Fred Wellman's show the other day. In the military, when the other side starts stumbling and you have an advantage is when you actually have to work the hardest. We now have to work harder because we have an advantage, and we have to prosecute that advantage as best we can, because now we're in a place where this work we're doing means that we win, that we're not trying to catch up. We're not behind and struggling to catch up. We're now in a place where if we prosecute our advantage that I think we have, we can win this election. So we're playing to win here, folks. This is not playing to catch up or playing to be even or playing to stay in the game here. We're playing to win. And so all of your work, I think, is going to become, far more joyful and excited. And you can just feel it, right? I mean, I see people in the chat talking about how young people they know anecdotally from their friends and their kids that young people are much more engaged, which brings its own special kind of energy into the race. That's certainly true. So I think we should be very optimistic. And I also want to just thank everyone here for having, been part of the Hopium community, have been part of our House races, all the money we've raised, the volunteering we've done. It's been incredibly impressive what everyone's been able to do here. And as I said, we are launching later today, a Thursday night to augment the work we're doing in the House, to make sure that President Harris has a legislative partner in the House. We're augmenting the work. We're doing more because now we're playing for the win here in the House, is that we're doing more, and we're launching this Thursday night at 7:30 program to make calls and to postcard into the battleground House districts that we've endorsed. There'll be an announcement about that. And I'm just asking everybody here to maybe give me a couple Thursdays between now and the election to call into these House races and to postcard into these House races, because if we flip these 12 races that we've endorsed, Hakeem Jeffries will be the next speaker. These are the races that are the swing races that we can win with really strong candidates who are raising lots of money, who are doing the work. And with a little bit of extra push, right, we can push them over the finish line. And so this is really deeply meaningful work now for all of us. I mean, this is go time, folks. I mean, early voting starts in the presidential election on September 20th, less than 2 months away. We're here now. The election is getting into later stages, and we've got to, whatever you can do for, if you're thinking about giving money to the Harris campaign, do it before July 31st. Help her have a huge filing that sends a big message to the world about the backing that she has, the support she has. And if you also can volunteer, there are links throughout my site and through the emails every day of how to volunteer on campaigns. And now we have this additional Thursday night program that we're going to have at 7:30, where you'll be able to work specifically on these House races. It's an exciting time, folks, and I'm really optimistic about what we're going to be able to do. And I think the difference between us winning this election, right, and just having, of us winning this election is going to be how much work we all do together. And I think that, the Harris campaign now has the biggest grassroots army that any presidential campaign has ever had. They have unbelievable amounts of money, and it means that we're going to be able to be very, very loud in these final days to counter the loudness that exists on the right. And I also think you have to really acknowledge that Trump and MAGA have been struggling. I mean, I don't, they've been caught flat-footed. I don't think their response to her has been effective at all. Trump's running around going and speaking at Bitcoin conferences. I mean, it's outside the battleground states. It's just kind of, they look, he looks, the term I use, I mean, people are using weird. I'm not sure I'm settled on that. I prefer batshit crazy as my term that I use for Trump and MAGA. I think it's more appropriate and more accurate. They've looked particularly flat-footed and confused in the last few weeks, or in the last 8 days since Harris became the vice president, became the candidate for us. So I'm really optimistic. And batshit crazy is better. I think batshit crazy is more accurate. Actually, it's why I've been sort of settling on it. Being a New Yorker as I am, we often swear too much in New York, but that's, that's more appropriate in the time. I'm going to take a little break and I know that the leader is going to be with us here, and I just want to make sure I'm capable of seeing when he comes in and bringing him into the conversation. But I wanted to give you a quick overview about where I think things are. I'm very optimistic now about the state of the race. We've still got a lot of work to do. And the Senate races are going to go down to election day, and we won't know until election day, but we're on offense now. We're not playing defense. We're not operating out of a place of fear. We're operating out of a place of strength and power and moving forward. And that's really critical here, right? Like that we have to own the sense that, if we do the work, we can win this election. We're playing to win here now. It's a sea change in the way we have to approach our work, I think. And it makes our work together more joyful and more satisfying than being motivated out of fear. And so, I mean, that's the core of this Hopium project, right? Is that we need to be operating hope with a plan, that we just don't hope the election's going to turn out well. We do the work to make it so. Let me just check in with the leader's team to make sure that I am not somehow missing him, because I'm a Zoom guy, but all of our, Jonathan says he should be on shortly. Thank you, Jonathan. Here he is. Hello. And here we have the House Democratic leader, the next speaker, my old friend, Hakeem Jeffries. Welcome, Hakeem. Thank you so much for being here today. I know how busy you are. It means so much to us that you've taken time. but we have over 1,200, 1,300 people here on a Monday morning, right? And as you know, people are fired up and ready to go. And so thank you so much. What we'd love to hear from you is just give us an update on the election, all the energy that you're feeling. I mean, you're on the ground, you're talking to candidates, you know what's happened in the last week. It's a new election, it's a new bluer election, as I like to say. But please, I Jonathan, can folks let me just see. I can see the leader, and so if you take over, you're gonna once you start speaking, you're gonna come onto camera. I just want to make sure your staff knows that.
Okay,
So
sounds
anyway,
good.
yeah, thank you so much, Hakeem. Take it away.
Well, good morning, everybody. So good to see you, Simon. Thank you for your leadership, for your friendship, for your support, for continuing to inspire all of us in terms of the path forward and where we need to go in order for America to continue our march toward a more perfect union. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us on a Monday morning, for all of your extraordinary support during this critical time. I think all of us over the last week have seen an explosion of excitement and energy and enthusiasm all across the country. President Biden, who's a patriotic American, a great American, a heroic American, made the selfless decision to pass the torch to Vice President Harris, who has taken it and is running with it in such an extraordinary way, with all of us behind her in the Congress, in the community, and across the country. We're going to fight for our freedom. We're going to fight for our families. We're going to fight for our future and push back against the extreme MAGA Republicans and their agenda and Project 2025 and their effort to take away reproductive freedom from the women of America. We believe in a woman's freedom to make her own reproductive health care decisions, period, full stop. And we're going to make sure that we draw that battle line in the sand as our candidates are continuing to do. All across the country, Simon, in the congressional districts, whether that's in New York or California, the two seats that we have an opportunity to win in the Deep South in Alabama or Louisiana, in the Midwestern battleground states in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, in Michigan, the states where we have opportunities to win seats, like, for instance, in Nebraska too, which is in the Omaha area, or in the Portland suburbs and exurbs, where we have a real opportunity to win a seat there. Our candidates and our frontline members have seen the Democratic electorate invigorated and, of course, swing voters and independents intrigued at the opportunities that are in front of us to put Trumpism behind the United States of America and in once and for all a long national nightmare. Now, this is still going to be a tough race, a competitive race, because America in so many ways is a divided country. But we're on offense in the House of Representatives. We're only four seats short. When we took the House back in 2018, we were 24 seats short. We're only 4 seats short. 4 more in 24 is our motto. But of course, we are going to try to win much more than that to make sure that we have a comfortable margin so we can partner with Democrats in the Senate and the 47th president of the United States of America, Kamala Harris, to continue to get things done for the American people. We will continue to put people over politics. We will continue to fight for the things that matter, like lower costs and ending price gouging and growing the middle class and addressing the housing affordability crisis. Of course, defending democracy and fighting for our freedom, foremost amongst that, reproductive freedom, and of course, financial freedom, and partner with our friends in the advocacy communities and organized labor and everyday Americans like all of you who are once again stepping up to make sure that America can be the best version of herself over these next 99 days. Let's continue to show up and stand up and speak up for what we know is right. And when we do that together, we can win the day and win the week and win the month and win the year, win the election, win the hearts and minds of the American people, hold the Senate, hold the presidency, and take back control of the United States House of Representatives. Thank you, thank you, and thank you for your extraordinary support.
Leader Jeffries, thank you so much for being here. I just, to remind everybody, because there may be some new people here, our Winning the House campaign that we began 2 months ago by endorsing 12 candidates that were in these key swing districts that were winnable for us, that if we win these 12, we win the House and make Hakeem Jeffries the speaker. We've raised $700,000 for now in just these 8 weeks for these campaigns. All you can, on the Hopium site, can either give to each one individually, or there's a button to do all 12 at the same time. You also have links to volunteer on all those campaigns, but also Leader Jeffries, we're launching this week with the DCCC a Thursday night phoning and postcarding program. Every Thursday night at 7:30, the Hopium community is going to gather to pick one of these 12 races that we've focused on, and we'll be calling and postcarding into the districts starting this Thursday night with Janelle Bynum in Oregon 5, who's a phenomenal candidate, by the way. We interviewed her a few weeks ago. And so we're stepping up. I mean, as I talked to the community earlier today, we are on offense now. When you're pressing, when you have an advantage, it's when you have to work even harder, right? Because now we're playing for the win. And I think that's what's changed so fundamentally in the election. And the other just update for you, because Tony Vargas is one of these races that we've really sort of an important race. We've raised $60,000 for Tony, $125,000 for the Nebraska Party. We're all in there. The Hopium community is all in Nebraska. And we're really excited about that race. And he'll be joining us in an interview just in the next couple of weeks. So, this community, I'm very grateful to this community for how much they've stepped up, not only for Kamala Harris and other projects that we've been on, but the number one thing that this community has done, the most important thing, and we did races throughout 2023, if they're stepping up for you, Leader Jeffries, I mean, they have really rallied for this cause, because we know that President Harris needs a legislative partner in the House to advance her agenda next year. And so thank you so much for what you're doing. And I'm wondering if you could just, in our time here, we've got a few more minutes, just share. I mean, I think this has been a very emotional time for all of us. And, both in terms of the respect that we all have and the love we have for Joe Biden, but also, we've all known, many of us have known Vice President Harris for a long time. And she's come out of the box so strong and powerful and capable. And it feels like she's in such command of the moment. Can you talk a little bit about that as a fellow politician and elected official, just what you've seen in her performance and the way she's just taken it? She's a woman who's met her moment in time in history. And it's been so exciting to see. And I'm just wondering if you could reflect on that a little bit.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Simon. It's been very exciting to see. And as I address that very important question, let me just also thank the community for supporting Janelle Bynum, one of our star recruits. We're going to win Oregon 5, and she's doing an amazing job. And of course, she has beat Chavez DeRemer twice before in legislative races. And last time I talked to Janelle, I said, we're going for the Triple Crown. We're going for the trifecta. And you all are helping us deliver it when she defeats Chavez DeRemer a third time in November. And of course, Tony Vargas is doing an amazing job in Nebraska too. Thank you so much for that support. Simon, you're exactly right. Vice President Harris has burst out of the gate like a this that happens when you have a messenger, a message, and a moment all coming together at the same time, which yields this tremendous momentum. And that's what we're seeing. She's speaking to the issues in such a clear and concise and charismatic way, whether that's reproductive freedom, freedom generally, whether that's the contrast between moving America forward into the future and pointing out that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, who is weird, and of course, the extreme MAGA Republicans simply want to turn back the clock, utilizing Project 2025, which is also clarifying and energizing for people all across the country, because we understand the stakes that Project 2025, which Vice President Harris has leaned into aggressively, and it's been phenomenal to see, because she understands that at the end of the day, what Project 2025 is about is total control over your life by extreme MAGA Republicans versus the freedom that Vice President Harris has leaned into in such a powerful and eloquent fashion. And, we're seeing young people energized, progressives energized, women energized, communities of color energized all across the board. That's the Democratic electorate. It's game changing. And now we've got to go out there, of course, and make our case, as Vice President Harris has been doing, particularly around the economy and decency and traditional American values of democracy, to the independents and swing voters who will help determine the election in states like Michigan and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. And so the dynamics have shifted dramatically. I'm all here for it. And the extreme MAGA Republicans in the House, I got to tell you, are having a complete and total meltdown. They do not know what to do. They were measuring the drapes, which is one of the reasons why I think we saw such an extraordinarily unqualified, nasty, weird individual like J.D. Vance named as vice president. I mean, I think at this point, Donald Trump is saying to himself, wow, is Sarah Palin still available?
That was a good one.
How about Dan Quayle? I mean, at this point, but they are having a meltdown. We'll stay on top of the issues, stay on top of articulating a vision and a forward-looking agenda that is designed to solve problems for hardworking American taxpayers, make life better for everyday Americans, deliver real results. And we're so proud that leading that charge is Kamala Harris.
So, I've been she has in her initial remarks that she gave last Monday, she had a great line about the economy that I really loved, which was, it's not enough that we get by, we have to get ahead, or some version of that. And what I've been really excited about is her connection to opportunity, because I think that some of what happened during COVID is that some of the shutdown Democrat arguments against us stuck a little bit, for some voters during that traumatic time. And I think that, like what I'd like to say is that for some of our coalition, we got on the wrong side of opportunity with them. And I think that she's her own story, right? Child of two immigrants in the United States, and, this incredible story of upward mobility in her own life, right? She's connecting, in my view, to this basic idea of opportunity, getting ahead. It's what Democrats are best at. We want everyone to get ahead. They don't, right? I mean, even their tax plan, they tax middle class and they cut taxes for wealthy people, right? We do the exact opposite in our party. And so I do think that, to your point, her framing and orientation around the economy and upward mobility and people achieving their dreams is very powerful out of the box. And I think it's going to, I don't know if you saw over the weekend, but in the ABC News poll, her faves and unfaves, her favorabilities got into positive territory. So she's +1 favorable, unfavorable. Trump was -11, right? She's now, her favorabilities have gone through the roof in the last couple of days. And so it is very exciting for us. And I think, let me just do a quick one because I know you got to go, but I spoke to both Will Rollins this last week and Laura Gillen. We interviewed them, and both of them said they've had a huge increase in both fundraising and volunteers in their races. And so this jump of activism isn't just happening at the presidential. Can you talk a little bit more about what you're hearing from the candidates around the country about how things have changed on the ground for them? Because I think many of the people here are people working on the ground in some of these races around the country.
Yeah, no, we've absolutely seen the surge of activism, volunteerism, and certainly grassroots financial support increase exponentially in these battleground congressional districts, two of which that you mentioned, Will Rollins, amazing candidate out west, and of course, Laura Gillum here in New York 4, a district that President Biden won by 14 points. This is a strongly Democratic district. In fact, the most Democratic district in the country that is held by a Republican. Laura Gillum is going to help us take that seat back. 40% of that district is of color, a lot of suburban college-educated women in that district, and the surge of energy and enthusiasm is going to help carry Laura Gillum over the top. So it's been interesting that in the 24 hours after President Biden passed the torch, we of course saw the surge of fundraising activity and volunteer activity for Vice President Harris and her presidential campaign, the DCCC also had its best 24 hours online since the fall of Roe v. Wade. Since the fall of Roe v. Wade, which obviously was a catastrophic event of a different order, and people responded to that crisis moment. This is a response anchored in the energy and the excitement and the enthusiasm for a candidate who can lead us forward, and an understanding that she needs partners in the House, of course, as well as in the Senate. And there's no evidence, no indication that this will let up. We've got our convention, Simon, and so we will have the opportunity for her, of course, in advance of that, to choose a vice presidential partner. And we have an abundance of riches in that regard. Whoever she chooses is going to be an incredible asset that will supercharge the electorate and also focus independents and swing voters. And then, of course, we'll have the convention for 4 days heading into the traditional final quarter post-Labor Day. And we'll see whether Donald Trump agrees to debate Vice President Harris. He's running scared right now. He might not. But, either way, he either ducks the debate, and that, of course, in and of itself will have, I think, electoral consequences, particularly for independents and swing voters, or he decides to show up and has to confront a highly skilled, charismatic, very intelligent prosecutor who can litigate the issues in a way that I think he certainly wasn't expecting to have to confront. So all of that will translate into continued excitement for us at the House level, as we have been seeing in congressional district after congressional district across the country. And thank you all. Thank you, Simon. And thank you all for just leaning in terms of the House. We can get this done. 99 days left, 4 more in 24, but we're going to go for much more than that. And the 12 that you are focused on are 12 incredible opportunities for us in the context of taking back control of the United States House of Representatives and holding the gavels on January 3rd of 2025.
Hakeem, thank you so much. Good luck. We're so proud to be on your team. We're excited to make you the next speaker. And as a guy who grew up with a dad who was a Brooklyn Dodgers fan all of his life and still had his heart broken, right? Just so proud of you and excited to be, part of this team that flips the house and gets this done. So thank you so much, folks. We're going to stay on for a few more questions until 11. Hakeem, good luck. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, everyone.
Hey, everybody. That was great. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to go to some questions, as I said I would. And I know if people got a scoot, please do. It is a work day. And let me just see if I can just answer some of the. Look, you just heard the story, right? I think let me just try to recap what we've talked about today. And I want to just make a statement about the sort of the theory of hopium and why we're all here together, is that we have been operating for the last several years in a place where I said, do more, worry less, right? Meaning that we had to channel this anxiety and this fear that we all had into good works in order to get us out of the ditch that we were in, but also as a way of, managing that anxiety and that worry, right? But I think we're approaching our politics now in a different way. I haven't been using the phrase do more, worry less in recent days. I've been using the phrase fired up and ready to go. I think we're on offense now. Things have changed. Hopium is in abundance now inside the family, and we need to live there and stay there, right? I think it's one of these things that is really important, that we can't let ourselves get dragged into places that are not in this place of optimism and hope and good works, right? Is that don't have that knee-jerk reaction or that ability to look at the 87 amazing things that are going on and focusing on that one thing over here that's not so happy, but that also doesn't really matter very much, right? We have to unlearn some of the habits we've gotten into in recent years, because now we're in a place where we're operating, where we're on offense, where we can win this election. We're playing to win. We're not playing defense. And you heard it from Hakeem, right? I mean, just felt, you could feel his energy and the passion and the intensity and the smarts, by the way. I mean, he's so articulate and capable. He's such a powerful leader for all of us, and will be an amazing speaker, when he's in power with our help. But what's important now is, however much money you were going to give before, give a little bit more. However many hours you were going to volunteer, try to give a little bit more. Do it from a place where you're on offense and prosecuting our advantage, instead of doing it out of a place of worry and fear. Because the work will be more joyful. You will be happier. You will be more contagious in bringing other people along. I really believe that this kind of optimism, hopium, right? Hopium is hope with a plan. We just don't want the election to turn out well. We do the work to make it so. This stuff is infectious. And it's been, to me, in my talks that I've been giving over the last few months, or a few days, I should say, I got this feeling of joyfulness from all of you, frankly, right? Like, it was amazing how often in the chat, in the commentary, in posts on Hopium, that people were talking about not just a sense of relief, but a sense of joy. And that's different, right? That's a more powerful place. It's a more affirmative place. It's a more compelling place, that we have this sense of joy and optimism. Look, this is going to be a hard election. The Republicans are going to spend unbelievable amounts of money trying to rough up the vice president and all of our candidates. But we're not playing defense anymore, right? The vice president came out last week on offense with a strong message and narrative, a powerful video right away. She campaigned across the country. And I think part of the reason she was ready is that she's been campaigning like crazy for many, many months in this election. It hasn't gotten as much attention as when the president would go out. But she's been out, fashioning her stump and listening to voters and hearing from people. And she was clearly deeply connected to the moment when she began this last week, right? Her video around freedom with Beyonce was incredibly powerful media. She's organically growing through social media and TikTok in ways that were harder for the president to do. And so the team we're going to have is, it's going to be her and her VP. It's going to be Joe Biden out campaigning. It's going to be Barack Obama and the Clintons. I mean, we're going to have this incredibly powerful team out supporting her in her campaign. And of course, the most important part of that team is all of you. I mean, the reason why we've been winning elections all across the country since Dobbs is because of the work that all of you have done. You have continually pushed our performance to the upper end of what's possible in election after election, through the money you've given, through the phone calls you've made, the texts you've done, the canvassing you've done, the postcards you've sent. All of that work and reaching voters and turning them on and talking to them has pushed our performance to the upper end of what's possible. It's been the same basic election since Dobbs, where we have overperformed expectations. We've been strong. We've been doing, and we've been united, and they've been divided. They've been struggling, right? They've continually underperformed public polling and expectations. And I feel like part of what's happening now is the presidential race is now fitting into that basic formula in a way that it wasn't before. That we have, where we're post Dobbs, right? That we've been strong and on offense, and they've been struggling. And I think you feel that now. I think Donald Trump got much smaller in recent days. He became almost irrelevant to the conversation. He's running around speaking at Bitcoin conferences, and which is like, what are you doing? Are you already planning for your post-political life, and so you can get $100,000 a paid speech at Bitcoin and crypto conferences, right? It was kind of crazy what he's been doing. I mean, he hasn't been in a swing state. He went to Florida, Minnesota, Tennessee in the last few days. Like, hey, dude, there's these 7 battleground states. You might want to go over there. And the fact that they're keeping him away from the battleground right now, and that Vance has only done 2 public events, since he's been, he disappeared last week. They've kept him off the trail because he is the worst VP pick in modern times. Hakeem had a great line on that, by the way. And so, I want to just close by just saying, thank you all. I mean, this is really important what's happening in our country. We got to feel it and live it and trust it. Don't fight it, right? Let it be. Let this joy, this happiness, this sense of accomplishment and fulfillment, right? Let it drive you now. Let it animate you. Let it bring you to where we have to go. And I'll close with the closing that I've been doing in my talks recently, which is the question of why are we all here on this Monday morning here where all of you could be doing lots of other things. We're here. The reason I'm here and the reason I share this with you is that Joe Biden in his State of the Union address a few months ago, I'm a little tired today, a few months ago, talked about FDR's State of the Union address in 1941. And in that speech, FDR started rallying the country to go fight the fascists and to get ready to go into battle in World War II. It was the beginning of the PR campaign to get the American people ready to go fight the fascists. And it was sort of fascinating that President Biden chose to start his speech that way this year. I mean, it was sort of obvious that this was on his mind, right? This idea of trying to rally people to fight extremism and fascism here and everywhere. And to me, that speech, what's so important about that speech is that speech was also, that FDR speech in 1941 was also known as the Four Freedoms speech. And the four freedoms, the freedom from want, freedom from fear, freedom of religion, freedom of worship, were articulated by FDR in that speech, where he set up this basic framework of us being for freedom and them being, for a politics of what I call dominion or control of one another, a country over another country, a person over another person, a man over a woman, this basic duality of freedom versus dominion, which, by the way, is right where the vice president went, right, last week. I mean, that first video was all about freedom. And freedom is the foundational value of the modern Democratic Party. It became the foundational value in that Four Freedoms speech in 1941. And what's important for everyone to recognize is that speech then those four freedoms became the basis of the Atlantic Charter, which created the alliance between Churchill and FDR that ended up winning World War II. It became the basis of the UN Charter, which created in international law an understanding that nations had to be free and sovereign and that one nation could not have dominion over another. Those four freedoms became the foundation of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948, negotiated in part by Eleanor Roosevelt, which established in international law the idea of human rights, that people had freedoms, that one person couldn't have dominion over another. And what's important to recognize about this four freedoms and this speech and this idea of freedom is that the world that was built on top of those four freedoms, those foundational four freedoms, has created a golden age in human history. This world of the four freedoms, of Pax Americana, of NATO, has created a time when, over these years, these 80 years, that literacy rates in the world have tripled, meaning that far more people can do and pursue their dreams than ever before. We've seen global extreme poverty plummet despite a huge increase in population. We've seen life expectancy go from 45 years to 71 years around the world. And we've seen more people live under democracies than any time in human history. This has been a golden age to be alive over these last 80 years, these years of the four freedoms. And what's important for all of us as we get ready to go do battle and win this election in the coming months is that we did that. The Democratic Party of the United States did that. We created a golden age in human history. And it's why I believe that we may be arguably the most powerful, important force for good and progress of any political set of arrangements in all of human history. The Democratic Party of the United States. And what Biden was referring to in his remarks was that he was intuiting that, or suggesting that, the America had, and our party had answered the call when called to fight fascism in the 1940s, and that we're being called again. And what's happening is that all of you, by being here today and doing all the work that you do, are answering that call powerfully. Because we as Democrats know that this world, this golden age in human history, that we're motivated by making sure that it's there for our kids and our grandkids and the kids and the grandkids of all the people of the world. That's why we're here. The stakes are so high. But what's important, and the reason why I'm so optimistic about us winning this election, is that all of you have been answering this call so powerfully and showing up in the midterms and in Wisconsin last year and in Florida and Jacksonville and in Virginia. And you've been out there doing the work, pushing our performance to the upper end of what's possible and continually beating the fascists, just like we just did in Europe, the UK, and France, where the fascists failed to gain power. The voters of the West have been beating the fascists and preventing the fascists from getting to power. We have one more big election. We had a very encouraging elections in Europe. We've just now had our change. We're now, I think, on offense and far more likely to win than they are. But we got to go finish the job and go win this thing together. Operate from a place of confidence, of strength, of unity, of power, and let's go out and do the work that we need to do to win the presidency, to flip the House, to keep the Senate, give Kamala Harris the opportunity to govern with strength and power in the way that she can and the way that we've all seen it in the last week. This is a time of enormous promise, everybody. But I think the difference between us having the election we all want to have and us not having it is based on how much work we all do together. I know you guys are ready to go, but make sure that everyone you've ever met is also ready to go too, because the stakes are so high. And this is an election we just simply have to win. Thank you all so much for what you do. I'm so grateful. Keep working hard. Help support our candidates. Send a thank you note to Hakeem, and let's go win this thing together. Take care, everybody.